Today's guest on Pipe Dream is Sean Blanda, content strategist and former director of content at Crossbeam. These days, he runs his own shop, GateCheck Studios, where he helps brands and creators figure out what to do with their own media platforms. So we're really excited to have him on. Sean is also one of the first original guests that I interviewed on B2B Better, the OG podcast, way back in 2020, if you remember it. Sean's based in Philadelphia, and he's been thinking about owned media since before it was a panic-induced necessity for every B2B company on the planet. Sean, welcome very much to Pipe Dream.
This is a full circle moment for me because our first conversation was the deepest part of COVID, the deepest part of COVID where I couldn't leave my house. So now we're back. We're back in so many ways.
Absolutely. And we had the real pleasure of meeting each other face to face for the first time in New York last year, which was 2025. That's, there's a lot of bad things to be said about social media, and we don't need to get into it because it'd be a whole other podcast. But I think one of the best things that have come out of social media for me is the opportunity to meet great people like yourself, not just online, but actually carry those relationships into real life and in person. So that was a great moment for me, and it's a real pleasure to have you back again on one of my shows.
Likewise, man. Really appreciate it.
So what's been happening since we last spoke? Tell me a little bit about what you're working on now, your shop, what's going on?
Yeah, when we spoke, I was early days at Crossbeam, which is a kind of a partnership platform that helps companies like connect their data to one another and like surface new, overlapping customers, opportunities, prospects. I was the first marketing hire there and eventually the VP of brand and content there. And around 2024, there was like a disturbance in the force. I think we all felt it. This AI stuff was coming. There was the venture capital money was like sliding to these AI companies. And I just kind of wanted this space to figure out what this would all look like in this new platform shift, which I know you've talked about a lot. And I feel like you get one of these platform shifts every 10 to 15 years, and this was a big one. And I wanted to kind of be in the front line, so to speak. So I hung up my own shingle, GateCheck Studios, where I'm helping, first, honestly helping myself navigate it. But as we get into it, I'm helping companies navigate this new landscape. And it's been incredibly fulfilling and intellectually stimulating, and I'm having an excellent time.
That's awesome. And, that transition from kind of going from Crossbeam into GateCheck Studios, you mentioned there was this kind of like paradigm shift. Was it like a light bulb moment, kind of shot of lightning? I need to go out there and I need to do this thing now. I need to take advantage of the opportunity. Or was it kind of more of a slow burn that kind of culminated in you saying, okay, now the time is right to go out there and start GateCheck?
You always have the narrative fallacy where you ascribe a narrative to something that maybe wasn't there. But in my mind's eye, it was when I was always pretty anti-SEO as a strategy, which we could get into. But at least it was this like backbone of like traffic, and there's brand stuff you couldn't measure, but at least if someone's really pressing you for measurements, you'd be like, look at the SEO strategy. Look, it's like yielding results. It was very quantifiable. And I always found that as like my backstop. And when Google starts doing AI summaries and I'm seeing the uses of ChatGPT and like these LLM usage start to tick up, I'm like, oh, this is the first time I'm like, Google, this is before Gemini like really took off. I was like, oh, this is the first time Google might not be a company, like in the long run. Like this is the first existential threat to this. And that's the first existential threat to the like framework that I'm operating in. And, I come from like a news and journalism background, and I saw this happen to media companies in like 2006, 7, 8, 9, where the internet happened and there's definitely a fork in the road. People were like, we will adopt this. This is our new way of operating. And the people who followed it or put their head in the sand. And that's been one of my most profound career lessons is, as scary as it may be, do not put your head in the sand. And I couldn't allow myself to do that. So that's one of the reasons I made this shift.
That's awesome. And so obviously the majority of your business now is kind of helping companies navigate this shift.
Yeah.
And, we know that B2B companies have known for years that they should try and own their audience and own their platforms. But I speak to dozens of companies every month who I'm sure like you are still continuing to run the same old tired playbooks, investing money in the borrow channels, the paid channels. They're trusting the algorithm to get them in front of the buyers that they want to be speaking to. What do you think the psychology is there? Like, why do these really smart people in these businesses continue to invest heavily in this rented land when perhaps they should know better?
I mean, some of it is the kind of like measurement effect. Like if I can measure it, it works, which, I think you and I probably have been in meetings where we're like, our argument is effectively, trust me, I've seen this work, be patient, right? And they're like, well, like how long? And you're like, so sometimes it's 9 months, sometimes it's 12 months. And it like, if you listen to yourself talk, it sounds like you're selling like like vaporware. But like I've honestly seen this, and I can point to many, many examples that I've been a part of and other people have been a part of. And I think some people don't have that patience, both like literal runway, they don't have enough time. I think some people, if I can see the CPC of an ad come through, like I can at least report that somewhere, and like that's enough. And then this own media strategy only works if you have conviction or a strong point of view. And some businesses like just don't have that. And honestly, like nor should they. They're like, selling something that's more like commodity based. So I think there's that. And there's also this like pendulum thing that I've seen several times in my career where everyone's like, we're doing very like design thinking and everything's to be well considered and branding is everything and taste is so important. And then like, 18 months later, it's like, no, growth hacking. I found the LinkedIn algorithm loop and like, invest in me, comment, white paper if you want to see. And then it goes back the other way. Like we need to slow down. And I just seen this over and over again. And the thing I try to do and advise my clients to do is that's like the weather that's going to change every day. But what will not change is you at the end of the day have to convince another human being to believe in your company, its direction, its mission, and what you're offering, the solution you're offering. That a human being has to make that choice. So you have to meet them on a human level eventually. So the more you invest in that, the more of a moat you have, the more inbound you have, all the brand love, the brand halo, the things you and I know. And some companies like aren't hearing that, and that's fine. They're not for me. They're not for me to work with. But many companies, the longer they're in business, the more they see the benefit of this.
Do you think there's anything that's happened, particularly in the last like 18 to 24 months, that's really like turbocharged the need for this shift that you're talking
Yes.
about?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
The slop wars happened,
Mhm.
which everyone got access to these LLMs and we're like, oh, because if you're operating in this SEO mindset, which is one reason I don't like it. It's like, oh, we can flood the zone and rank, and like that's our ticket. And they hit a button and there's 1,000 articles. And I think there's some minor edge cases where people are figuring this out, but in general, people do it. They see this little spike, and then they get regress to the mean very quickly as these like models adjust and like the like Google adjusts. And what I'm seeing is almost like a reversion to like the 2004 internet, which it's like, it's word of mouth. It's me sending you links. It's like communities. It's Slacks. It's email newsletters. It's forums. It is, I show up to a meetup and someone's like, have you heard of this? And that just goes so much slower. But every person you get is more likely to be, a member of your community and customer and audience. When before, if you had 1,000 people come to your page from, I don't know, a search engine page result, if you got whatever 5% of them, you were happy. And I think we're just like adjusting the model, adjusting our expectations, adjusting the numbers as a result.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And
I mean, are you seeing that? Did you see this little like slot
yeah, absolutely.
thing happen?
I was going to
Yeah.
say that, about 12, 18 months ago, and we were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, a lot of potential customers are coming to us and, they're looking for the world, but because they have this like kind of false narrative in their mind now that AI makes everything far cheaper, their budgets basically only stretch to the kind of the creation of the slop that you're kind of talking about.
Yeah.
And there's just so much of it now. And I think in even what is like a short amount of time as a society, like we have become pretty well accustomed already to identifying, what we're reading as being either of value or of being, crap. We are starting to see the kind of pendulum swing back to the middle. Now, I don't think it's ever going to go back to where it was. And I think that opens up a whole interesting conversation around like the future of the agency model. And, that's not really what we're here to talk about today.
Oh, interesting. I kind of disagree, but we can touch on that.
Yeah, well, look, but I think, what it does do is it creates great opportunity, for businesses like mine to be able to kind of be the guide for customers and have those honest, tough conversations of like, look, we can be more efficient here, here, and here because of artificial intelligence. But this, and this is your secret sauce. And if you try and bastardize it by plugging it into an LLM, then
Right.
what's the point of even starting in the first place?
Yet it's like it's like the way I think again, I keep going back to like when in the late 90s, the way people just talk about the internet in general is the way people are talking about AI. Like obviously the internet is made of many things, right? And like same with like this like AI platform shift. And there's like a bifurcation of using AI for creativity and using AI for I would call it operations, right? Or like yeah, ops. And leaning as a marketing team for AI for ops is incredibly empowering. You can do way more. Like you can do faster research and get better data and like pull insights forward faster. I found that 100%. And that is like such an unlock. But if you're leaning on it to do your creativity, to do your IP, to like, what should we say about this? Then you're by definition going to be average. And I think the companies that understand that operation side and they're like, great, and now I can really laser focus on talking to my community, talking to my customers, talking to my audience, surfacing insights and like see where the wind is going and like see where the market's going before it even gets there. And then using AI to extend that. I think that's the benefit. I mean, there's like can you remember there was someone's job on a marketing team often to just like repurpose content, like take this interesting interview and like let me write 4 blurbs and 5 social media posts and whatever, and like let me load it into the CRM and all this or CMS and like all this stuff is now like so much easier because of all these tools. And that's why I find it incredibly empowering. Like I can focus and my customers can focus on like the frontier stuff.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it's really cool. But I do think there is like you know, there is a place for these tools in the kind of creative process. And I think that's what you're saying in the sense of like, if you are totally outsourcing your point of view to an LLM, that is a recipe for disaster. And like you say, you will never be better than average because obviously the results that you are getting back are the collective sum of whatever the LLM has been trained on, which already exists. But I have found that using kind of Claude or Gemini as like a sparring partner when I am doing creative work to also enable kind of like better ideas. So
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like we kind of sit here in the office, we're launching a new show, we will workshop with the client and between ourselves, like what do we think makes this different? Like what is the tone of voice? What is the point of view of that customer? And like how can we package that up
Yeah.
into an interesting premise, develop something, and then throw that into an LLM and say, all right, critique this for us, run like a pro research prompt, what else exists that may or may not be similar to this idea that we have developed. And I have found that, starting with that kind of kernel of an idea, the time it takes to go from that to like a full blown creative proposal that you're putting in front of the client, which used to take, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, can now be done in, let's say, 5 working days if you're using these kind of tools in the right way. I don't know if that's something that you've had experience with.
Yeah, I more use it less for the sparring and more for like tapping into the corpus of research I've done. So, like for one client, for example, I spoke with around 30 of their like stakeholders and customers, like of all their different personas, and old like I wish I take like a journalistic or research approach. So like I interview them, I transcribe it. Back in the day, I would like do notes and I'd have it all like organized. And now I can like shortcut that a little bit by like as I'm writing, a proposal or some content for them, I can say of the 30 interviews I did, who mentioned topic X, and then it pulls up, and then I can like comb through that. And oftentimes it's wrong or it uses like a word that doesn't, it's like off, but at least like I'll do my own research and be like what I miss essentially. And occasionally it will like pull some. I'm like, great. And that like speeds that up. The sparring I found, um, it's like a little like sycophantic. Like I've had it tell me, and I use Claude Code mostly for this, which yeah, Claude. And I've had it tell me ideas were good, and I'm like, that is objectively bad. Like I cannot understand why it's saying this. Or it's like it will overcomplicate things. So like I think from a creative perspective, it's only good as a filter for the research you've given it. But like from scratch, I found it to be like straight out of college intern level taste
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at times.
Yeah, and that's why you need a human, kind of on top of these
Yeah.
things. Like you need to have your own kind of taste, like applied on the taste of the LLM.
But to your point, like I am solo-ish. I have like a few freelancers and consultants I work with when I need to like ramp up operations. And the amount I can do as an individual now is like so empowering, and I can move so quickly. And I've won clients in some cases where my argument is essentially like I will move faster than a large agency or even your in-house team, right? Um, because of like I'm just like one person and I like have 17 years experience doing this and I will shortcut to this place you need to go.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're paying for. We've we've touched on the word community a couple of times, and I want to bring the conversation there because I think every brand out there, every B2B brand likes the idea of building their own community and kind of owning that community. But I do feel like the word is perhaps on the kind of precipice of becoming just like another bullshit buzzword. Everyone seems to be launching a Slack group. It kind of lasts for like 3 or 4 months and then it just dies a death and everyone kind of forgets about it. Talk to me a little bit about when you think community building actually makes sense for a B2B business and when it's just kind of like, I don't know, LinkedIn FOMO.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when that community would exist without you being there or not, right? So I'll get like, um, I'll use Crossbeam as an example. My time at Crossbeam, like the audience there was like business development professionals, like at tech companies, essentially, and that community existed. Like they had touch points otherwise, but they weren't as often as that community would have liked. So right, so we can say like, hey, we'll create a space here that is not about Crossbeam, is not about our product, but it's about being a business development professional. Um, I find that to be the most propelling and compelling because that that community will be self-sustaining because they were already there. You're not like dragging them to like a party and saying, "Stay here, please." They were already at the party. It's that or there's some mission or problem or idea outside of the product. So, I used to work with Envision, RIP, but one of their brand values was, design leadership and giving designers a seat at the table was like one of the things they would always say. So like a lot of communities and properties were built around that idea, not necessarily about Envision the product, but like how do you as a designer become better? And then that is compelling whether Envision or not exists. And surprise, Envision doesn't exist anymore. And that community is like still there in many ways. And I think that needs to be true. I think where companies get in trouble is where they make themselves the main character. And um, that's not only boring for the audience, but I think it's actually like boring for the company too. You don't learn anything when you do that, and I've thrown my body in front of a few Slack communities for that reason that I don't think need to exist.
I think you're touching on something interesting in relation to kind of like this kind of like cold start problem that exists, like whether
Yeah,
it's like building an own media program, like, or kind of like launching a community. Y- All of these kind of initiatives need distribution. And if you're a brand that doesn't already have an existing audience, like
yeah,
where do you start? Like how do you actually go about getting people paying attention to what
yeah.
it is that you're creating, whether that be kind of like content IP or a community, an event series, or all of the above?
I mean, there's a lot of problems that B2B companies are facing right now, which have been long, not solved, but like grappled with from just media companies, right? Like there have been innumerable number of media startups in which this is the exact problem. And like the path is like pretty similar, which is there is some person within a very galvanizing point of view about the way the world should be or a message that should be out there, right? Or a community that should be gathered. And that person is the seed, right? Them, their network, their friends. This is why founder-led content to me is like a little funny because it's like this is how everything has worked for all time. Like it starts with one person and then it branches out. But yeah. Um and so it's like through your social and professional networks, and those numbers are not high, right? They're like that's not a lot of people. But the idea is it's like a filter where the stuff you make needs to be so compelling, so interesting, so useful that it makes me want to tell somebody. It makes me want to share it. It makes me want to like pass it on to the next person. So that to me that's the choke point. It's not like can I get a few people to read this? Like if you are founding a company or you're an executive at a company, you have some people. If you're on a team, like there's some seed of people, and especially if you already have customers, your customers are the seed, right? Like there's lots of ways you can start. There's lots of partners you can tap into. There's lots of other people, other own media properties, right? They need audience, you need audience. The amount of audience swaps I've seen, right? Like everyone is looking for the same thing. There's lots of pools of audience you can tap into. That's not the problem necessarily. The problem is growing past that seed because you have something unique and compelling and interesting to say. That's the thing people should focus on more than that initial distribution.
I mean, you spend time talking to your customers and helping your customers figure out their kind of positioning, their messaging, their point of view. And like what you're telling me is, and I agree with, by the way, it's like you can get that first cohort of audience through the door just by leveraging your own network. And in fact, actually, we've just launched a YouTube channel here at B2B Better. We had 0 subscribers 5 days ago. We now have like almost 50 because I've been going out there and calling in favors from friends and family and saying, hey, if you're interested.
You're out on the street with a sign.
I basically said in a LinkedIn message, I'm coming to you with hat in hand here. Like, please give me a subscription. But like the hard bit is then, okay, those people have subscribed. How do you get them to amplify the content on your behalf and get people who don't have a relationship with you to kind of like pique their interest and stick around? And so what's the process that you would go through with one of your customers to help them figure that out? Like, how do you create that kind of compelling point of view and that compelling content?
So again, I do a very like, I think old school, unsexy manual thing that I think has been working for a long time, which is, when I do the research on what that point of view is and is that valid, and I talk to, the customers, stakeholders, prospects, the people that they're trying to reach. The question I always ask is like, where do you hang out? Where do you get your news about thing? Where do you learn about topic that this company cares about? And I often see patterns, and then I start with the overlap of those patterns. So for example, one of my clients is in a certain nonprofit space, and there's this one very niche nonprofit industry publication that everyone told me. They're like, I read it. But it's funny, they're like, I read it, I don't like it, but everyone else reads it, so I have to read it because I have to go to these conferences now. And like that is such a great signal because that tells me like, oh, they're staring at it and they're dissatisfied with what they're seeing. So I can partner with that organization, perhaps offer like another alternative or another place or like a niching down of what they're seeing. And that audience is telling me they're hungry for something more substantial. So like I start there. It depends on what I hear from the different constituency. And I think where people get in trouble is sometimes the ICP is you, right? Like you would fit into your ICP. You're starting a company that solves a problem that you had. That's like pretty typical. But it's when the ICP is not them, they go awry. So they'll be like, oh, obviously we're going to be on, YouTube because everyone's on YouTube. Well, like your audience is, conservative 50-year-old bankers. Like they're not on YouTube, buddy. Like they're, the billboards would work better. I'm making this up, but like I try to go in eyes wide open and talk to and research with their ICP as much as possible. And the answers will come up. You'll see the patterns.
I think one of the challenges that I had when I was working in-house was I wasn't my ICP, like we were going after.
It's really tough. It's really tough to do that.
Like, for the sake of argument, let's say that we were going after like CTOs of like FTSE 100 companies. That's not me. And the only way that I'm going to get access to those people is through the people who have those relationships already within my company, like sales and the executive team. But getting them to open the door for me was always such a huge challenge because there was this kind of like fear that I'm going to say something that's going to jeopardize a relationship, which obviously was never going to happen. But like, how do you get that kind of first party data that's going to guide you as to, okay, here's how my customers are consuming information, where they're consuming information, when it's kind of, you're coming up against obstacles like that, like actually getting in front of those potential customers to do the research.
Yeah, I have a pretty bracing conversation in those. So if they're like, we want an audience, and I'm like, okay, let me talk to the audience you have. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, you don't want to talk to an audience then. Like you don't want this. Like you're if you're so terrified that, the result of that conversation is not going to benefit the business, then you don't have the fortitude to build that community or that own media property. You're not ready for prime time, and that's okay, but let's just be like honest with what's occurring here.
Yeah, that's the right way to do it. And I mean, I do wonder though, sometimes that conversation coming from a external party, an agency, a consultant, a freelancer, whatever, sometimes lands a bit differently. I remember bringing people in to advise us on marketing when I was working
Yeah.
in-house, and they'd say the same thing that I'd been saying for 6 months, but it just kind of hits different when you're paying for the time, you know?
Yeah. I've had clients where I'm saying something to them and they're doing it, and then someone who works there would pull me aside and be like, "Man, I've been saying this for like 18 months." And like part of me is glad they're listening to you, but part of me is so pissed off that like we have to pay you to do this. And I'm like, yeah, this is like
Uh,
I think this is how it goes. I've been on the other side of this too. It's annoying.
It happens in my personal life as well. Sometimes I'll go to therapy and my therapist will say something and I'll go home and tell my wife and she's like, I've been telling you that for like 16 years. And I'm like,
The
yeah,
messenger matters. The messenger matters.
it does
Yeah.
matter. It does matter. Absolutely.
Right.
I want to touch a little bit on this kind of like rise of like independent niche creators. I'm thinking back to like when I started B2B Better. B2B Better was my own kind of side project, my own side hustle. It was a way of me building out my own audience. And obviously across particularly like the marketing and sales landscape in B2B, you see individuals all the time building out their own podcasts, their own newsletters, like growing up their profile that sometimes even like rival like traditional media outlets in that space, particularly when they're niche. What do you think that kind of means for the B2B brands that are like employing these people? Like, are they competing with their
Oh
employees?
yeah. Well, first, if the person doesn't work for you, you asked, how do I find the audience, right? Essentially, right? Like some B2B companies are like, okay, if all these platforms aren't working, how do I find it? The number of small and niche creators is such a gift, right? Because like those are pools of audience, and those creators are usually like, we'll love a sponsorship, right? We'll love a partnership from a big brand, right? And if you have a strong point of view, you can offer them something incredibly interesting. So from like a general like distribution economy perspective, I love seeing these little like smaller things pop up because one, like competition is good. Two, there's more pools of audience to like reach into and see. And three, like there's more examples of what's working, right? Like I see people doing stuff. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. That is so clever. Or like, oh, I see them trying to do this and I don't think it's resonating. Okay, that's like a good note. So I think that's good from like a wider perspective. But when they're working for you, this is something I grapple with, which is you there's some people who think I just had a conversation yesterday about this. There's some people who think you need to make like a creator house mentality, right? Like empower the individuals working for you to essentially become creators and have a strong point of view. And I think that works to a degree, but eventually like the brand needs to have like a steady point of view, right? Like the brand needs to stand for something. And you as the marketing leader need to be okay, I think, with people helping shape that point of view, amplify that point of view, build a platform with you, and then eventually like flying away. And I view it like SNL, right? Like you need to be a Saturday Night Live. Like you welcome these people, you help build their taste, you help build their voice, you help amplify them, and eventually they're going to go off and make movies, or maybe they're going to go off and you never hear from them again. But then you're so strong with your process and your point of view and your creative cycles that you will welcome the next generation. You will do it again. And I think that's the mindset that a lot of these companies need to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. As we look at bringing this conversation to a close, I want you to play devil's advocate for me a little bit. Give me the strongest argument that you've got on why kind of owning your own platforms may not be the way forward for your business. Like, why would customers or B2B companies rather be better off not investing in their own media?
Because the other stuff's working, right? I've had as I on my journey with this consultancy, in the early days I was trying to figure out the exact way to approach this, and I pitched it to a company who their go-to-market motion actually didn't require owned media. It didn't require thought leadership. What it actually required is getting in the room with very large company chief information officers and showing them a demo. Like they had like a huge hit rate for that. So me slowly and meticulously building a newsletter or an audience was like glacial when they're like, we already have a thing that's working. We just need people with industry connections. We pay them, they connect us, and we're in the door. And it's like, that's a go-to-market motion that's working. Yeah, you don't need to waste your time with this. Or if you were, it would be such a long-term play, right? So I think every company has a different go-to-market motion. And if your go-to-market motion relies on trust, long sales cycles, high ACVs, maybe establishing a new category, I think some of this own media stuff is great because, it builds an education and awareness of this thing that you're trying to advocate for. But if you can attend an event and scan a bunch of badges and land some deals, like, God bless, like, do it. It's not for everyone. So I think it's an eyes wide open situation. Like, it's not for everyone. There are better go-to-market methods for companies, but I do think for the companies who are trying to do something new, the own media works, because you simultaneously have to educate and inform and make the market aware at the same time. And I think this is a cost-efficient way of doing that.
Great way of ending this, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today on Pipe Dream. Where can people learn more about you?
I'm at gatecheckstudios.com, and I am about to launch a newsletter about building an audience in the age of AI at humaninternet.ai. So subscribe there for more takes.
We will definitely drop the link to that, if it's available, in the show notes of this episode. Sean, thank you once again for coming on to Pipe Dream. We will not leave it 5 years to have you on
Appreciate
the next season of this show. And for anyone who wants to learn more about Sean, we'll drop all of his relevant links in the show notes, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much, Sean.